Welcome to the Level Up Business Podcast. I'm J.R. Lay, and today I'd like to introduce you to my friend Eric Jeppson. Eric, it is good to have you on the show because we have never talked about what we're going to talk about today on the Level Up Business Podcast. You're going to be able to share a lot of wisdom that I know are going to help a lot of other entrepreneurs elevate their business, level up their business, and even their life, because your area of focus is around business law. And I know just saying that some people might be feeling it in their body. Oh my gosh, we're gonna talk about business law. I did, because I remember taking a business law class in college, and I was like, God, this is pretty rough stuff. But that's why I'm glad you're here today. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And before we get too far into the world of business law, I'm going to start off on a positive note. What is good for you right now, personally and or professionally? It's your pick to get started.
Yesterday I watched my daughter compete in a pole vault competition in college. She's NCAA, and that watching her and seeing her compete is a blast. There's a lot of good things happening with all of my children right now. That's what's good for me.
And you've got quite a few in your brood. It's 7, right?
I have 7 children, yes.
7. So yeah. 3 more than my 4. And then you talk about the competition. Your wife also runs marathons as well, correct?
She is, yeah. She's done that now for coming up on 20 years. She never ran in high school or on the college level, but she's found a love of it, and it's her outlet, and I think she's up to 15 or 16 marathons.
Wow.
Done Boston 5 times, or actually maybe 6 times.
That's amazing. And what about you? You work out too. You've got some fitness prowess in you. What's your flavor? You're not pole vaulting, are you?
No. In fact, I think my daughter picked that so that I couldn't give her any coaching, because I've played about every other sport. I enjoy them all. I love them. I love being active. I was a big soccer player. I also wrestled. I was in football. Now it's mostly pickleball and mountain biking.
All right. Well, I think about soccer. I think about Rusty Bynum, who is also he's in Elevated with us as well. He was and also Billy Bloom, another soccer player too. So really interesting to listen. I was a basketball guy. I was a one sport. That was it. Just basketball was my focus, and I think that's an interesting segue to go from sports to business law, which is your area of expertise. I look at you as like the person, and you made a LinkedIn post about this recently, and I think I even replied along this lines, like, you're the one who's up in the watchtower on the boat. You see an iceberg ahead. An entrepreneur might look at that iceberg and be like, that's no big deal. It's kind of just in my way. I'll just run that thing over. And you're like, no, that thing goes pretty deep. It could sink the ship if we're not careful. How did you get into business law to begin with in the first place, and why?
Yeah, it's a good question. Law wasn't ever the thing I was going to do. At least I didn't think it was until I got into college, and there's a pathway that sort of took me there. And as a part of that, I was in deciding to go to law school, I went and interviewed a whole bunch of people who had already gone there, who are practicing law and doing all their thing. And the more I found out about it, the more I explored, the more I was intrigued, and it just made a lot of sense. And so because of that, I went to law school and quickly joined what was an entrepreneur student association at the law school, and became the president of it. And really what it amounted to was we would find alumni who had started their own business in one form or another from the law school, be it law firm or otherwise, and we'd invite them back for a brown bag lunch, and they'd tell us their story, and I always felt that was fascinating. And then when I started my career, I was at big law, but quickly realized I wanted to do my own thing, and problem was I didn't really know how to run a business of the practice of law, so I had to spend a lot of time and effort figuring that out. And it's been fascinating because I've always enjoyed working with business owners, and the business owners themselves, I know a little bit about what they're going through based on what I was going through in running my own business of the practice of law.
Well, I
If
think
that makes
that's
sense.
what brings a very like empathetic perspective to you, because not only are you practicing business law, I guess you could say you're practicing entrepreneurship. I've never thought about entrepreneurship that way, as it's something that you practice, because I think the more you do it, the the better you get. I'm not going to say the easier it becomes, because there's always another level to work to climb to. And that's one of the reasons, like, I think with you, in the way that you're wired, you're looking to learn, you're looking to grow, you're looking to elevate. If you think about your entrepreneurial journey as a practicing business law, what how much of it was being the president of the Entrepreneur Association in college? Did that influence you? Because you did go into big law, but you realized very quickly, like, this isn't for me.
Yeah, I've never thought about that way. I just, it was so fascinating to listen to these guys' stories, and then they needed somebody to kind of take the ball and run with it. And I'm like, well, I'll do it. I want to keep hearing these stories. So I think it did have something, if not a lot, to do with it. It was just fascinating to see and hear people's stories and understand that, I guess, envision myself doing the same thing. But that's not really what you do when you graduate from law school and you try to get the best job with a big firm, and those sort of things for a lot of lawyers, not all of the law students, but a great experience at the firms I was at. In fact, it taught me so much about how to interact and deal with business owners. Being a large law firm, you often work with executives, mid-levels that are at big companies. And so you get that opportunity to see what that's all about. And then along those lines, you now have experience where you can, I don't know, you can help them solve their problems. That's the biggest thing that I feel like I do at the heart of things is people have problems and it's a puzzle, and I love solving puzzles. So let's get to the solution somehow.
Well, I think it's interesting because, while we're not here with a brown bag lunch, you're now exactly who you used to recruit to come to the university to talk to your brown bag lunches. And so now you're the one getting to tell the stories and share the wisdom that you gained over your journey. What, as an entrepreneur, has been the biggest lesson that you've learned about yourself? Not about business, not about law, but just about yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Hard to pin that down. I've learned a lot about law, a lot about business, about myself. I think, I don't know, Jared, I think that's part of the reason I've enjoyed the journey so much, is because you learn so much about yourself when you're starting and a venture or a business and trying to figure out how to make it happen and create value. Like that doesn't happen for the faint of heart. You actually have to be all in on it. And well, with all the other distractions going on in the world, sometimes it's hard to be all in, and you learn a lot. So I guess what I learned about myself is the importance of constantly introspectively looking for clarity and purpose and vision. And when you align those things with what you're doing and how you're doing it, it's a blast. It really is enjoyable to be, basically kind of serving people in the way where you help them get out of their way, you help them put their issues behind them, and have a clear path to a solution, to continue to add that value.
What do you see? Because it's like you're kind of on top of the mountain. You've climbed up to the top of the mountain, but there's always going to be bigger mountains to climb, which is where you talk about, if you want to learn about yourself, and this has been a belief of mine, if you want to self-develop, two things. athletics, fitness, whatever you want to call that thing, no matter your age, and then become an entrepreneur or work in an entrepreneurial organization, because it's a very different path. It's a very different journey. And it's one that you do learn a lot about yourself. And I want to go over to the law side of things. When you talk about clearing the path, you've got elevation, you've got perspective from a higher vantage point, say kind of on the top of the mountain, to help other entrepreneurs see and avoid pitfalls. What, from your perspective, are the biggest pitfalls, the legal pitfalls, when it comes to an entrepreneurial business that you're helping your clients watch out for? They might not even be aware of to begin with in the first place.
Yeah, boy, that's a loaded question for a lot of reasons. Because I would say the pitfalls are not appreciating the the barriers or the potholes or whatever else is along the way, not appreciating because they just are so excited and ready to go forward, and whoever they're in partnership and whoever's doing the business with them, they're really making it happen. And because they're making it happen, everything's very hopeful. Everybody's on the same page, or at least it feels like it. They always say to themselves, this is my best friend, or this is my family member, or this is my colleague that I have just implicit a ton of trust in, and there's no reason why they shouldn't to a certain extent, but they've never considered, well, what happens when things change? And nobody ever wants to talk about that because it's a little bit uncomfortable. And so they just don't think ahead. They don't see the end from the beginning. And because of it, they aren't willing to do a little bit of effort. You know, I always make mention of the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. They just don't appreciate that there's a little bit you could do up front. Yeah, it costs a little bit of money, but if you do it up front, you can save yourself not just tens of thousands, but even hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. If you wait until the time is now to try to figure out a cure, you know.
Yeah, I've had that painful experience myself, and I'll be the first one to step up. And it was with a family member, you know. And once again, things change. It's hard to foresee that, but I think for someone in your spot, you've probably seen this more than once, and so the patterns become very clear very early, very often. And as a result, you want to help people avoid that pain before they have to experience and learn the hard lessons themselves. When you think about some of the work that you have done, what have been some of the, I'd say the I'm not going to say failures, because in my world, I don't believe in failure. I believe in just their lessons to learn, and sometimes they're very expensive lessons, unfortunately. But what have been some of the expensive lessons you've seen clients have to learn, perhaps the hard way, and it didn't have to be that way?
Yeah, I mean, I could think of. Let me try to do this with keeping all the confidentialities, of course,
Of course.
because a lot of the stories that I think of, they involve clients, and of course, I have to maintain that. But like, for example, one particular matter, they created a product, and the product had patents, and the patents were created, and they were even like established and registered, and all that's fine and good, except they never stopped and asked who should own the actual patents, and who has the authorship rights. And there's a few other elements along those lines. I wasn't involved in any of that. All I know is that they set this company up 10 years later. Best of friends, they decide to go a different direction. And when they do that, they still want to stay in the business. They just couldn't do it together. But now, who owns those rights? And we ended up spending probably $130,000 were my fees alone over a period of 2 years. And that's before even a lawsuit was filed. That we recognized that a lawsuit would get very expensive. We tried to avoid it, but there was still that much money spent on it. And it was such a pain because they didn't know exactly who had the rights of ownership, and that's what we fought about largely. And again, I'm not a patent attorney, but I deal with businesses, and that's one of the big issues that people deal with when you're in that line. So we got all that resolved, JR, and that after that amount of time, it drained everything related to the coffers, so to speak, and my client barely was hanging on. Well, everybody on his team felt the same. One of them, who was kind of an upper management, took one of the patents and decided to leave and start his own company. The problem with that is that there are ways to, if they had stopped and memorialized how things were happening and what and how they happened and what needed to go going forward, now that my client was alone in his business going forward, still business going well, just now he has some people leaving because they feel like the ship's going down. Well, in the process of that, now fast forward, my client knew that he took that, and we ended up sending a cease and desist, but he said, Eric, I can't afford anything. I just got to go make business happen. I can't afford to go after him. I can't afford, I'm having a hard time. And so to his credit, he went forward and he became very successful with that product. Now, fast forward, and sorry for the long story, but
No,
he now is successful, and now he says 3 years after that moment, I'm going to go after and sue him for patent infringement. So he started that fight. He didn't let me know about that, mostly because I'm not a patent attorney. He hired some big guns that do that sort of patent litigation. Came back to me and said, hey, Eric, do you have those corporate documents, the minutes that we had? And I said, well, no. Remember, you ended our relationship because you didn't have any money left. And I told you, you've got to make sure you do this on your own. I gave him the forms. I gave him everything. He just didn't do it. So what that ended up being is another fight. That fight lasted. He was already in that fight for about a year and a half already when he came to me asking me for those documents. And when I found out what it was, that particular lawsuit played out where I then got sucked back into helping him, not on the patent stuff, but on the business side of things. He ended up spending another 130,000 just on my fees. That was after about $1.6 million he spent on legal fees to his national big law patent litigators, and we ended up getting that particular fight resolved. For a lot of it's kind of a fun story, but sorry for the long length of this, but it got resolved, and we got it taken care of. And finally, after my involvement and after a 28-hour straight mediation that we went through with the other side, no joke, once it was done, the owner of the company, my client, got that put behind him. We got it all resolved, and there was a whole bunch of story behind it. But what happened is within the next 2 weeks, his patent attorney helped him file and register 4 new patents, of which made the 5 patents we were fighting about obsolete. And he has since, after spending over 2 years and $1.9 million total in legal fees, and me helping him see a lot of stuff along with the rest of the team of lawyers, but helping him see there's enough room in this sandbox for everybody to play. Just, you are so far ahead of them business-wise, just keep blowing out of the water. Don't worry about competition and just move forward. As soon as he had the fight off of his mind, he was clear again to grow, to develop, to create. And what he did was he made that fight almost entirely obsolete. Never should have happened, never needed to happen. And he's already, this has now been several years, but that very next year he was 20% increase in his bottom line. The next year, 30% increase. He's now got a fulfillment center out on the East Coast and on the West Coast, and he is killing it. And hard lesson for him to learn. But for me, that was one of those disasters that if you had just paid attention from day one and actually hired us to pay a little bit of an ounce of prevention, you would have not ever had to pay this pound of cure. Not once, but twice.
Well, and I think that you kept apologizing. No, don't apologize, because that's the story that those who are watching and listening to this podcast, because they're other entrepreneurs, they need to hear these stories, because it's all a matter of perspective. And if you haven't lived that, it's a great testament to what could happen. But there's something else too, that if you're watching and listening, you might not be hearing. You might just be hearing the dollar amount. And Eric, you were touching on this ever so slightly, but it's like, I want to come back to it. The energetic cost to an experience like this. I think at one point he was almost ready to just no, I'm done. But he found the resolve to quote unquote push through. But something happened when he put all of this behind him, mentally, emotionally, perhaps even energetically. It gave him the clarity to just keep going forward at a much faster pace. So there's some other cost, I think, associated with these situations and these issues. And then you just recently posted on LinkedIn, there are 2, 4, 6 questions that those watching and listening could ask themselves. One is, are our entities and ownership records actually up to date? This kind of sounds familiar to this story here.
Right.
When was the last time we really read our commercial lease, which is another part of the law that you're helping with? Are our key contracts clear, current, and consistently used? Are we handling employees and contractors the right way? Do we have a plan for disputes before they happen? Reconnecting back to the story that you just shared, can we predict our legal spend for the coming year, or is it all guesswork and emergencies? And that is where you have done something very unique. Because you have talked about prevention and cure. You have developed your unique method, which is the clean legal bill of health. What is that, and why did you develop this to begin with in the first place?
Really good questions. Clean legal bill of health is, I guess you call it a platform, but it's what I just tried to frame to sort of capture the fact that business owners, they need to have clarity. I believe one of the best ways to get clarity in a very practical way is to look at all your legal documents. Through the process of looking at your documents, putting the documents, by the way, is not the difficult part. Putting them together is not the difficult part for the attorney, for any attorney really. That's what we're trained in, and we have samples. We've done this a lot, and so it's easy to actually have the documents. The bigger part is actually helping the client understand what it is we are putting in those documents and what needs to go there. So in order to do that, I spend time asking them questions about how they run their business and telling, sort of forcing them, tell me what your best practices are for delivering this service or this product, and how does it function, where if you're operating at the top of your game, what does that look like? And based on that, I can identify what vendors you're working with, what customers you have, what your employees and the whole team that you have, and then the ownership documents. We can now match all of those with what you're actually trying to accomplish. So again, in order to do that, I have to ask lots of questions. It's very easy for me as a lawyer to ask lots of questions and ask lots of follow-up questions and find out where you're really feeling the pain, because when we're able to identify that, we now can come up with a solution that gives you the opportunity to correct it, to streamline it, to create standard operating procedures, to set a new standard for your own business. What that does is it gets you totally in line with your legal documents and gives you all the protection, liability, otherwise, in all these different relationships. But what it actually does for you behind the scenes is it gives you a ton of clarity. And tell me, what business owner does not function and operate better when they're totally clear on what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it, and now they get to move forward. So that's kind of what it is. The idea is that a client will come into me. I guess it comes from this. Why I sort of got here is I was trained by Big Law to be a litigator. That's where I started. That's where I cut my teeth. It was all in business or and businesses that touched property as well, like
Mm-hmm.
construction and developers or whatnot, but most of it all in business. And so when I left the law firm to hang out my own shingle and to go out this, obviously at the time I'm like, I'll do anything. I don't care. I just need to take care of my family. But what happened was it was very easy for me to find the clients, whether they came from my buddies who were still at Big Law and they would send me referrals or however they came. And I began to realize really quickly litigation is not the place a business or a business owner wants to be. It just isn't. And if they come to me and they pound their chest and they're like, I want to go after them. I don't care, Eric. I'll spend all the money. I'd rather pay you all that money than them. Even in those cases, I'd say, no, you don't. You really don't. You're a fool of a business person if you think that, going through litigation is the right business choice. It doesn't mean we can't use litigation as a means to the end, because sometimes you can't help it and sometimes it's necessary. But generally, the quicker you can get something resolved, the better off you are, because now guess what you got to do? You get back to, kind of like I told you with my client, you get back to creating, building, developing, and adding value in meaningful ways. Like you get to move forward like that, right? And so you just are moving forward and building and growing, and now you're doing what you always wanted to do in the first place.
It's interesting.
And,
I hear there's so many similarities and parallels to this clean legal bill of health and the first step of our Level Up Business OS, which is to clarify and align. You talk about the clarity, you talk about the alignment, but I think the important thing is it sounds like a diagnostic process, the clean legal bill of health, like you're looking at and reviewing kind of like a physician would, like all of the different entities, the leases, the contracts, the dispute processes, but then you provide next steps, so recommendations, but I like the way you frame it. No guilt and no lectures. That's so important because I think, it's easy to like get stuck in the shame cycle of, oh my gosh, but you're like, no, you take a different approach. You take an elevated approach to this to help give them the clarity and the alignment to then take their business to the next level. So I appreciate the work that you're doing to help others on their journey to level up business.
well, I'll tell you, JR, about the no guilt or no shame. For every client who might want to be tempted to feel that way, I could give you 10, 15, 100 stories of how you're not alone. Because I've dealt with this, it feels like almost with every client I've worked with is helping them see that they're not alone, that everybody, I just think that it's part of the drill to figure out how to run the business, and without, you're going to make mistakes. There's no question about that. Let's just minimize the mistakes. And if you have one now, let's quickly resolve it so you can get back to doing what you do best.
Exactly.
That's all.
And those lessons, those mistakes are just lessons. And sometimes, as you shared in that story, they're more expensive than others, and we don't even need to have those lessons to begin with in the first place. If someone is watching or listening and they're like, I could use a clean legal bill of health myself. I like and I connect and I resonate with Eric and what he is sharing. What's the best way for them to reach out, connect, and say hello to you?
Yeah, probably just my website, jeppsonlaw.com. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Hit me up on LinkedIn or just shoot me an email. And it's ejeppson@jeppsonlaw.com.
Connect with Eric, learn with Eric, level up with Eric. And by the way, you mentioned LinkedIn. You're putting out some good stuff. So if you're watching or listening to this and you want to continue to learn with Eric, connect with him on LinkedIn for sure. Eric, I appreciate you for joining me for another episode of the Level Up Business Podcast, buddy.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yes, sir. Hey, it's JR. Before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. Are you a visionary entrepreneur who wants to elevate your brand and expand your influence to increase your impact? If this is you, You're the reason we're on a mission to amplify the voices of visionary entrepreneurs by unlocking their wisdom, sharing their stories, and publishing their books. So, when you are ready to level up your business and your life, send me a text to 832-240-1922. That's because I want to teach you to amplify your voice so that your mission and message are seen, known, and heard by those who need your help the most.